Thank you for turning to page 121, and welcome to an episode that to me is pretty special. I have the title of An Anniversary, 600 Episodes and Vampires. The anniversary is 3 years of the channel. 2 days after the posting of this video, my channel will be 3 years old. In those 3 years, I will have posted 600 videos. This is my 600th. I'm a little stunned at both of those. And just for grins, one of my favorite monsters from the Monster Manual, vampires. So on the 3 years, I want to thank everybody. If you were around way at the beginning, which not many people were, I wasn't real prolific the first year or so I had the channel. I did not many at all in the first 6 or 7 months that the channel was around. I started picking up sometime in August or September of 21, and that's when I got a little more focused on the channel and have continued to make videos on a pretty steady basis since then. But I have a total of 600 videos, well over 100 hours of viewing time filmed. I'm just a little blown away by both those numbers. So I want to thank everybody who supported the channel through the years. Thank you very much. I recently crossed 3,000 subscribers, so thank you for that as well. Thank you for 3 years, 600 videos. And today we're going to take a look at my 600th, one of my favorites, as I said, vampires. So today on page 121, an anniversary, my third of the channel, 600th video, and vampires. Vampires. Why not? I remember first seeing Bela Lugosi as Dracula in the 1931 classic on the old WGN Creature Features, WGN Chicago Channel 9. I was probably 7 or 8 years old when I first saw it, and fell in love with vampires and have been in love with them since. They're a fun monster for a DM to put on the table, and they're just a lot of fun to have in your game. So we're going to take a look at the vampire here with this fine Dave Trampier artwork from Monster Manual. So the vampire number appearing 1 to 4, that's more than you need. Armor class 1, 8 plus 3 hit dice. Number of attacks 1, 5 to 10 damage. That's a d6 plus 4. Energy drain is special attack. Special defense plus 1 or better weapon to hit. Magic resistance see below. They're chaotic evil and they are medium. Vampires, I think, are so scary because they can pass as human. And I think that's one of the things I've always loved about vampires, that they could be amongst us at any time. Lots of cultures around the world have vampiric legends. It's pretty neat. The most dreaded of the chaotic evil undead is the night-prowling vampire. These creatures must rest in a coffin or similar receptacle during the hours of daylight, unless far beneath the surface of the ground, and in the latter case, they must occasionally return for such rest. Their power is restored by contact with the soil from their grave. Like all undead, vampires exist in 2 planes at once, in this case, the material and the negative material. Vampires have an 1876 strength. This is back in the days when creatures could have exceptional strength, but they would not gain any bonuses to hit, and the damage is rolled into the 5 to 10. The attack and damage would be plus 2 plus 4 there. If a vampire scores a hit upon an opponent, its powerful blow causes 5 to 10 points of damage, and its powerful negative force drains 2 life energy levels from the victim, complete with corresponding losses in hit dice, ability level, attack level, etc. I didn't really understand the concept of energy drain when I first was new to D&D. I think a lot of people kind of struggled with that concept a little bit, and I thought, well, no, wait a minute. This vampire doesn't drink blood. He's got fangs. Look at that. But he doesn't drink blood. What's the point? And then I realized, of course, game mechanics. You can't have the vampire stopping to suck a victim dry during melee. You had to come up with something else. And I think this is kind of a neat solution. So I have to tell you, once energy drain was brought to the table, we all feared it. We feared it a great deal. Energy drain is one of the things that my players still hate, whatever level they are. And one of the most popular items at my table is Scarab Protection, because that can confer up to 12 levels of energy drain protection. And of course, the Amulet of the Cairn Hills, which gives you a saving throw versus it. Vampires are affected only by magical weapons. They regenerate damage at 3 hit points per melee round. That's fast. If brought to 0 hit points by combat, vampire is not killed, but it is forced in a gaseous form. It must then return to its coffin within 12 turns, rest 8 hours, and reform a corporeal body. Sleep, charm, and hold spells do not affect vampires. Neither do poison or paralysis. Vampires take only 1/2 damage for spells based on cold or electricity. A vampire can assume gaseous form at will. Likewise, a vampire can shape change into a large bat whenever desired. Thus, the flying movement shown for the monster, with 12-inch on the ground, 18-inch in the air. If it gazes into a person's eyes, the vampire will have the effect of charming, the victim taking a -2 saving throw versus magic. Charmed persons behave as if they had been successfully struck with the spell. All vampires also have the ability to summon creatures to aid them. In subterranean surroundings, usually 10 to 100 rats or bats, the bats only confuse you, they don't attack you physically. And in wilderness settings, 3 to 18 wolves. These creatures come within 2 to 12 melee rounds. Vampires recoil from strong garlic, the face of the mirror, or a cross. I think somebody was reading Bram Stoker's Dracula when they wrote this up. Or several other holy symbols of lawful good. I'm going to address that in a minute. If any of these objects are presented boldly. Note, however, that none of these devices harm or drive the monster off. They do cause a vampire to hesitate 1 to 4 rounds before attacking in the case of garlic. A mirror or holy symbol will cause the vampire to position itself so the object is not between the vampire and the intended victim. Or the vampire will have one of its many creatures remove the device whose power is keeping it at bay. It must be stressed that lawful, good, holy symbols such as the cross are sovereign symbols against vampires of all sorts, regardless of the religious background of the vampire in its human existence. All right, let's talk holy symbols for a bit. Obviously, this is very old D&D from 1977. The cross, of course, in D&D doesn't hold any special power, but the vampires, the myth that we're all familiar with Dracula, comes from Christianity, hence the cross being the symbol that keeps the vampire at bay. I allow, and it doesn't have to be a lawful good symbol in my game either. I allow any good symbol of power to hold a vampire at bay or to turn him, depending on the situation. Vampires turn pretty easily, unfortunately, based on the turning table for clerics. I think an 8th level cleric has a 50-50 chance of turning a vampire. So you have to take out some of the Christian references in here, because again, I think we're talking about the Bram Stoker's Dracula, as opposed to just a generic D&D vampire. Vampire can be slain by the following methods. Exposure to direct sunlight kills the creature in 1 turn, and it becomes powerless immediately. A vampire immersed in running water for 3 rounds is killed. The vampire loses 1/3 of its hit points per round of immersion. If a wooden stake is driven through the vampire's heart, it is killed, but only for so long as the stake remains. To finish this task, the vampire's head must also be cut off and its mouth filled with holy wafers. Again, we're getting the Christianity in there. I allow the mouth to be filled with garlic to prevent it, or the body and head to be burned while the stake is in there. Would also do it in my game. Holy water splashed in the vampire causes 2 to 7 points of damage per vial full, which strikes the monster. Any human or humanoid drained of all life energy by a vampire becomes an appropriately strengthened vampire, under control of its slayer. This transformation takes place 1 day after the creature is buried, but if and only if the creature is buried. Thus, it's possible for a vampiric thief, cleric, chaotic evil in vampire form, of course, etc. If the vampire which slew the creature is itself killed, the vampires created by it become free-willed monsters. Vampires in the Eastern world are invisible. This gives them all appropriate consideration for invisibility, including -2 on hit dice rolls for opponents not able to see invisible objects. These vampires cannot charm, however, nor do they have the power to assume gaseous form at will. So coming back up here to being drained by a vampire. If you do suffer energy drain by a vampire, and you are drained down to 0 levels, you collapse. If you are buried, you then come back 1 day later as a vampire in servitude to the vampire who created you. So you're kind of a lesser vampire at that point. I've done it a couple of different ways. I've used the lesser vampires as having 5+3 hit dice instead of 8+3. And then if their master is slain, then they grow to full strength vampires. Also, the vampire retaining his class, the thief, the cleric, and of course magic user, Strahd von Zarovich of Ravenloft fame, very famously magic user vampire. Because why not? That can be a fantastic encounter and puts the vampire far beyond his 8+3 hit dice of damage. I let the vampire be equal magic user to whatever level he was when he died. He's an 8+3 monster, but if he was a 10th level magic user or a 10th level cleric, I allow him to retain those levels of casting. Same with any kind of thief skills or even fighter skills. I've had vampires commit player characters with swords, because why not? Vampire is extremely durable, and he's also skilled with the sword, so it can be a fun encounter. You don't have him just come in and do the energy drain. You have him come in and be a just kind of an engine of destruction with the sword and wearing armor, a la Dracula also in later iterations, following the life of Vlad Tepes, who Dracula is based upon. So it's not my great grandfather or my grandfather's, maybe my great grandfather. That's not my grandfather's vampire. This is a vampire that is based on the 1931 film and on the 1895 novel by Bram Stoker. That gave us the modern vampire as we understand it. Not the first vampire in print, I know that. Barney the Vampire, I think, gets that claim. But certainly the most famous and the most copied. So even this one with the high collar and the dark opera cape and everything, I mean, obviously we're drawing from our source material of Bela Lugosi. So vampires are great encounters. You can absolutely use them in a variety of ways. You can use them deep in the dungeon where they can stay active for days at a time, harassing the party. My son Adam once told me a story of a game he ran when he was away at college, where the players were hunting a female vampire and they had tracked her to her lair, and they were pretty new to the game. They decided to take their rest right in the mouth of the cave that led to her lair. She was a spellcaster, magic user, so while they were taking their rest in the mouth of her lair, she came out at sunset and hit them with a fireball. He got a big kick out of that, taught them a valuable lesson. He actually killed one or two players with that, and then they learned their lesson. So I think they revived one of the characters. I forget how. The other guy had to roll up a new character. I'm sure it was just his twin brother. But vampires can be a lot of fun. I use vampires quite a bit at my table. Unfortunately, a couple of my players are not fans of vampires, so I've had to tone it down a little bit, but vampires are amongst one of my absolute favorite monsters of all time, and they're so versatile for you as a DM that, yeah, absolutely, let's have some fun, and they can also be great role-playing. I did a vampire in one of my earliest dungeons, Wizard's Walk, which I first started in 1980, and I did a video on that about 3 years ago, and in Wizard's Walk was a vampire who just wanted to be left alone. He essentially had been around so long, he'd kind of gone neutral. He fed in ways the players never determined, but he didn't attack the players. He just wanted to be left alone. One of the players found a secret door that led into his closet, and they found his clothing, and they stole his clothing. They went to town to sell it. That group did get attacked by the vampire, who was very ticked that he had his entire wardrobe stolen by a bunch of stupid adventurers. So just one silly way you can do it. He was neutral otherwise. He's still in Wizard's Walk in my campaign, has been there straight through. He's never been successfully slain. He's only been in melee 2 or 3 times in his whole existence, because he's just a great non-player character monster to throw in there and just kind of have in my back pocket in case the players do something that needs to be corrected. So that's all I've got to say today on vampires. I want to thank you again for 3 years on the channel, for 600 episodes, and thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time on page 121.